Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is Paul, and what I'm going to be doing is talking about what I would consider the virtues of Christian scholarship. And one of the reasons I'm making this channel is I know there's a lot of channels out there on Christianity, on philosophy, and a lot of these issues. So what I hope to do is add something. I hope to maybe bring a slightly different perspective, and in particular, one that's maybe a little bit more academic and charitable and not so polemic like a lot of the apologetics content and other such content out there. And I really just hope you find this channel helpful and that it's valuable to you, especially even to the skeptics and atheists and agnostics and all those people. I do think there's something valuable here that you can get. And my hope is you learn something and we think about things and we think about them in a different way. And anyway, I'm rambling. So we'll go ahead and get started. The reason I wanted to make this video is a couple years ago, actually very recently, about a year or so ago, I was going through a period of very extreme skepticism, extreme moral skepticism, and I'll talk a little bit more about this maybe in another video. And I did what any person who didn't know if he thought the Bible was true or not, or Christianity was true or not, probably should do, especially if you think maybe I'm a Christian, maybe not, is I actually opened the Bible and I started reading it, and I started with the Gospels. And to be honest, it really helped. It really helped my life, helped my personal life, but it also helped my research. And that's a weird claim. And if you're like hearing me say this and you're skeptical, believe me, I was like, what the heck? Like, how did this help my research? Now, I'm not necessarily making the claim that, all of a sudden, like, the Holy Spirit possessed me and caused me to do better research or anything like that. Other than to say, I think the teachings in here were very solid. And it makes sense why, to me, the university system that we tend to have actually comes out of a very Christian and Greek perspective. And that's what I want to say here. I do think whether you're a Christian or not, but especially if you're a Christian, these ideas from Christianity are going to be helpful if you're doing any sort of scholarship or any sort of research. I've personally found that to be the case in my own experience, and I hope this content is helpful to you as well. So let's go ahead and get started. The first virtue, I'm going to name 5 of them, and perhaps the most important virtue of Christian scholarship is what I call charity. Basically what it is be charitable to people and to their ideas that eventually come from people. So the first thing this involves is just listening. Just make sure you understand exactly what they're saying and don't rush to presuppose that somebody is wrong. Just say, let me listen to this person, let me listen to their argument, and try to represent it in the best way possible if I'm going to be having a conversation with them. I don't even want to say arguing, just having a conversation. I think sometimes we approach conversations or debates with the intention of winning, and we don't approach these conversations with the intention of learning. And sometimes the process of debate is valuable because there's something to learn and because there's process in the value of having your own ideas challenged. So that's why I'm saying the first thing to do is just listen and make sure that you're actually taking seriously what they have to say. This is what James 1:19 says, one of my favorite quotes. Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Pretty straightforward. Can't get more straightforward than that. This is what Karl Weick said, argue as if you're right, listen as if you're wrong. And here's Proverbs, a lot of Proverbs that I think are form the basis of a lot of scholarly wisdom or just wisdom in general. Proverbs 18:13 says, if one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. Basically, what I interpret this as is be sure you're listening and be sure you understand what the person's saying. Maybe don't be so quick to speak until you actually understand. Otherwise, maybe you're just adding noise to the conversation, or you're burning a straw man of some idea that's not actually somebody's argument. James 3:17, but the wisdom above is first pure, then peaceable, that's a weird word, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And I think that's the idea. When I think of Christian scholarship, it's good scholarship based on reason, based on solid foundation, but also it's gentle, it's agreeable, it listens, it's not trying to beat somebody over the head with intellectual superiority, which honestly I've done that before and I've been through that, and I'm just so much happier in my own life letting that go, letting that go, letting the need to feel smarter than everybody in the room, and really accepting a more of a beginner's mind. I think that's an idea from either DBT or maybe Buddhist thought of always being a beginner and saying, regardless of where I am, there's probably something I can learn from this. And then Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Once again, the idea being that listening to people who disagree with you is valuable to you, and listening to people who challenge you is valuable to you as well. And that's why it's the best, it's probably the best thing for you to listen to other people and take their arguments seriously, especially if they disagree with you, because that may help to refine your own ideas and help you kind of see the blind spots in your own worldviews. Once again, there's value in listening to opposing views. Proverbs 18:2, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his or her opinion. I love this. It sounds like social media to me sometimes, and I had to just get off. I had to delete that because I was posting stuff that wasn't useful for building other people up, and it was. There's a lot of, and even me seeing other people do this, I start judging them for this, and that's why it's not a healthy place for me to be on social media. Not only because I air my own opinions, but because I see other people airing their opinions and I start judging them, and it's just not a positive, conductive environment for me to be in. I'm not trying to say that about anybody else. Here's what John Stuart Mill says. He who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that, but his reasons may be good, and no one may have been able to refute him, but if he is equally unable to refute the reasons on the opposite side, he does not so much as know what they are. He has no ground for preferring either opinion. So once again, you got to listen first, especially before you decide. You got to listen to the best arguments. And you can't just listen to the worst arguments or the straw men, because to me, that's just dishonest. It's dishonest to say, oh, I've really taken this other side seriously. I haven't been open to if you're not open to listening to the best reasons that somebody else has. Here's John Locke, very similar idea. He that believes without having any reason for believing may be in love with his own fancies, but neither seeks truth as he ought, nor pays obedience to his maker, which is God, who would have him use those discerning faculties he has given him to keep him out of mistaken error. So this is talking about reason. He that does otherwise transgresses against him. Maybe his is what it's supposed to be, but the quote said him. His own light, and misuses the faculties which were given to him to know their end, but to search and follow the clear evidence and greater probability. So once again, this idea that Locke has, he's saying, look, reason is actually a gift from God, or is kind of one of the things maybe that makes us divine or made in God's image. And we have a sort of maybe an obligation or a duty to follow reason. And as a result, part of that process means listening to other people who may see the world differently than us and may be able to challenge us. The second virtue that's very, very consistent across all of Christianity in general is humility, and really just kind of means be humble and be open-minded. Proverbs 12:15 says it like this: the way of a fool is right in his own wise, but a wise man listens to advice. Once again, it goes back to this idea, how do I know if I'm really right if I haven't listened and open-mindedly considered all the alternatives? Proverbs 19:20 says, by insolence, which basically means rude or disrespectful, comes nothing but strife, but with those who take advice is wisdom. Listen to advice, take advice from other people. With all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing one another in love. This is Ephesians 4:2. Once again, just talking about just be humble and be gentle and come into these conversations with love, not with the idea of just beating somebody down or trying to prove how right you are. And then Proverbs 11:2, when pride comes, then comes with grace, but with the humble is wisdom. Once again, this idea between wisdom and humility. I think sometimes we think of somebody who's smart, who knows all the answers. I tend to think maybe somebody who's smart is the one who is able to ask the right questions, or knows the limits of their own knowledge, or knows the right place to listen. There's a difference between being like smart, I would say, and being wise, which maybe involves a lot more listening. And then, of course, Philippians 2:3, do nothing from rivalry or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. I think that's the idea, too, when we approach these arguments. Are we approaching this in a rivalry or a conceited way? Are we trying to ridicule them? Or are we really seeing their view as valuable or maybe even more significant? Like when you're having a conversation with somebody else, their view listening to them may be more significant because it's different than your own, precisely because it's going to challenge what you believe. And they may have good reasons. And if they do have good reasons and you don't actually consider it, you're going to be in error. That's kind of the idea. And that goes to the next point, skepticism, not contempt. And that's the difficult thing. A lot of people, they think skepticism involves this sort of like, well, I don't need to believe that. No, I think the idea is you should be skeptical. You should test things and you should look for reasons. But that doesn't necessarily mean you should be ridiculing them or have a kind of attitude about it, at least if you're a Christian. So I say question, but don't ridicule. 1 Thessalonians can't say better than this. Do not treat prophecies or any sort of wisdom with contempt, but examine everything, or some versions say test everything, hold firmly to that which is good. So literally just saying, yeah, be skeptical, test things, ask questions, and find the things that are true and are good and hold on to those, and the rest of those things don't hold on to, I guess. Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Once again, this idea of testing, of falsification, and discernment being a really important part of Christian scholarship. And I would say scholarship in general. How do you discern truth from fiction, really, is the question. And then, Acts 17:17 talks about, well, Paul was in Athens, so he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Keyword there being reasoned. He actually talked to people and reasoned with them. And I think there's this long history of Jewish people having very high educational achievement. I mean, this is just like a fact of history. Jews and Christians and a lot of people, but Jewish people in particular tend to be the most represented based on their population in higher education. And I think that's because Jewish people and Christians as well come from this culture that finds scholarship to be valuable and that finds reasoning to be valuable and argumentation and discussion. Not sort of argumentation for the sake of proving you're right, but argumentation for the sake of finding truth. The next one, this is just fundamental to a Christian lifestyle, is don't judge others. Judgment can really blind us to the truth. This is what Jesus says, Matthew 7:1-5. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. And this is why I think this is so brilliant, is because when we're judging other people, it's literally blinding us from considering their viewpoint. It's literally blinding us from seeing clearly. And of course, the idea, the call is don't judge other people, but it's also like saying, when you're judging other people, not only is it bad for them, but it's bad for you, and it's bad for your ability to see things clearly when you've already decided or already presupposed things. If you really want to help, you'll first start by taking out the log of judgment, is one of the ways that I interpreted this. And this is one of the key things that helped me, is I was reading other ideas in academia, and I was reading them with contempt, and I was presupposing that they were wrong and judging them. And it took a lot of, I read this and it was like really raw. It was really calling me out. I felt like in that sense of just not being charitable, of presupposing and judging. And it just was like me working to reduce that in myself has made a huge difference. And I've been way happier. And also I think I'm able to do much better research. So can't say more than that. I guess that's my testimony. Romans 2:1, therefore you have no excuse, O man, every one of you who judges, for in passing judgment on another, you condemn yourself, because you, the judge, practice the very same things. And I think this is in the context of saying the only person who's truly omniscient is God. Nobody else can see everything. So passing judgment before we actually see the whole picture or see the truth, especially if that judgment is even blinding us from seeing the truth, isn't good if we're trying to find truth. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. In John 7:24, do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. So I don't think Jesus is saying don't judge at all or just kind of be like, oh, well, anything goes. No, the idea is if we're judging people, that can blind us from reality And let's focus on judging ideas, and judging ideas by testing them, not judging people because of where they came from or these other sorts of things. And once again, this goes back to just focusing more on the ideas and not trying to judge people and maybe where they came from, all these fallacies. There's a strong connection between the logical fallacies and sort of treating other people the way you'd want to be treated. It's this sort of idea of, well, why don't I attack somebody's credentials? Well, why are these things logical fallacies? Well, maybe part of the reason is because when you're doing scholarship, you don't want other people to do that to you. And the whole thing devolves into a mudslinging match rather than actually talking about the issues or actually addressing the fundamental things that you're arguing about. You kind of go to this more surface level game and you're not actually getting deeper and trying to find truth. The next one, super simple. Just be kind. Watch your attitude and tone. This is just essential to the Christian experience, in my opinion. So whatever that you wish others would do to you, also do to them, for this is the law and the prophets. So what Jesus said in Matthew 7:12. I know the elder Hillel said something very similar a little bit before. And then Matthew 5:22. I tell you, again, anyone that is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. So Raka is a great word. It literally means empty-headed. And it's funny, you think, more than 2,000 years ago, the insults people had for each other are not that different from what we have today. Ancient times didn't have any technologies, like almost a completely different world. And yet they're still calling people, empty-headed and fool and these sorts of things. I think it's kind of hilarious, actually, that, in some way we haven't progressed past that in a certain sense. But really, I think the point is live your life as if you had to give an account for every careless word you said. And I think you start living your life that way, not out of fear, not out of saying, oh, like, I'm going to go to hell, so I better not. But instead saying, what would happen if I started living my life that every, insult, every word I said, I would have to actually give a justification for why I said that. And I would get to see what maybe they went through that caused them to behave the way that I did, that I maybe jumped to a conclusion and called them something nasty. That was actually something that stood out to me as well. It's just saying, I don't know the whole story. And as a result, I don't want to have the job of being the judge of who they are. That's not my job. I can't see everything. So maybe it's better to kind of withhold that judgment and also just try to be nice. James 1:26 says it like this. If anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. Sometimes some people say you don't bite your tongue, you don't hold your words. Different translations kind of depend differently, but just basically I hesitate to say this because I'm not trying to call anyone out, but if you call yourself a Christian and you use nasty language and your words aren't kind or for building other people, I think this kind of speaks to that. And James said it it's worthless. It's useless. Now, what I'm trying to say is if it doesn't have this transformative effect on your attitude and behavior with other people aren't going to resonate with it. And it's not a good situation. So I would say if you're a Christian, just watch it. Just watch your attitude, watch your tone. Especially if you're outwardly a Christian, you're representing Christianity, you're representing Jesus. Don't allow people to come to false conclusions about Christianity because of your behavior, because you're not living out the teachings of Christ. And then 1 Peter 15:16. 15 is always used in apologetics and in apologetic books, but I love 6 or 16 or the next verse because it isn't always included, and I think it's equally as important. It says, always be prepared to make a defense to anyone or an apologia. A defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. The idea being your attitude is so gentle and so respectful that other people see the way you're treated or the way other people treat you, they feel ashamed. They're like, man, this person's actually really nice to me, and I feel bad for calling them these words. And I think that sometimes happens. Some people, they'll have a conversation, they'll get angry, they'll call you a name, and you don't see this part of the conversation because it's in their head, but they walk away and they were like, man, you know what? I shouldn't have said that, because I was expecting them to get angry at me. I was expecting them to react a certain way, and I was wrong, and that was uncalled for. People realize it later. Well, hindsight's 2020, but we don't always get to see that ourselves. And I know that I've said some things to other people, and later on I feel terrible about it, because I'm like, man, that must have really hurt that person, and I didn't really have a right to say that. So once again, just do it with gentleness and respect, and do it in a way that's so respectful that other people themselves feel shame when they're insulting you, pretty much. Lastly, just don't waste your time and be willing to walk away. Jesus says this in Matthew 7:6. Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. And this is very tricky, because this isn't saying to just ignore people or walk away. But at a certain point, you'll find that there are certain conversations that just devolve into shouting matches or mudslinging. And maybe that's a time to just not spend your time, because your time is super valuable to you. And spending your time trying to convince other people that aren't even going to listen, if you don't get the feeling that they're listening, that's not to say you shouldn't try. You shouldn't give them multiple chances. But I think at a certain point you start realizing this isn't going anywhere. And rather than that being me judging them or anything, no, I'm going to walk away because it's not valuable for me and my own time and participating with that. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or anything, I guess put it in the comments. Working on a lot of other stuff right now. Hopefully bring you guys a lot of content. I'm trying to opt for a more quality over quantity approach. So anyway, thanks, and hope you found this helpful. Have a good one.